Hi everyone, my name's Simon and welcome to Insert Past Pun here. Today's interview is with Lavecki from the Too Spooky forums. I had a great time interviewing him. He's a good friend of mine, and as I say, I highly recommend you read his stuff. It's very enjoyable. Also, if you want him to critique your stuff, feel free to pop over to Too Spooky and leave a story in the critique section. He'll get around to it. He's normally pretty reliable. So anyway, here you go. Here's my interview with Lavecki. Cool. So hi, I'm Simon for Insert Past Pun here, and today I'm here with my good friend Lavecki. Say hello, Lavecki.
Hello, Lavecki.
Whee. Thanks for coming on. As I know we've been talking about you coming on for a while, and it's glad we finally got it together and actually got you on. So yeah, tell us a bit about yourself.
I'm Lavecki. I got back into writing probably, I think, 3 years ago. It was right after I went online and I was at work trying to figure out something I could listen to, and I was like, you know what? I used to like listening to creepypastas. I wonder if there's anything on creepypasta.com where I can just listen to it. And I found some narration channels. And at the very end of it, there was a Midnight Marinara episode. And I know you guys have talked about Midnight Marinara a couple of times on the podcast, but I listened to that and I was like, holy crap, this is real good. And then I immediately searched for it.
Yeah.
I found some more of them. I listened to all of them probably 2 or 3 times, and then I realized that a couple of my friends were actually in a couple of the episodes. They moved out to California a few years ago, and apparently they ended up being roommates with the producer David King for a little while, and so they ended up on a couple of their episodes.
Oh, nice.
That was a little interesting, and I've just I started writing. I contacted Slime Beast about, whether or not I could use some of his stories as inspiration, and he ended up emailing me about Too Spooky, and I joined up there. I kind of became the unofficial editor of the critique section by accident, and I've been doing that for quite a while.
Nice. So, I mean, was like when you first started doing the sort of creepypasta stuff, was that your first sort of foray into writing, or had you been writing beforehand?
I'd done some writing beforehand. I hadn't done anything super specific. Like, I didn't have a genre that I did. I think my first foray into writing that I can remember, I was in 3rd grade, and I wrote a detective novel about all of my classmates.
Nice.
And I'm fairly certain that book is gone and that the writing is terrible in it anyways, because my house actually caught fire when I was in 4th grade, so I lost a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
But I did creative writing for a little while, and I did a couple other things, but I never really got into it until recently. There was a point in time in high school where me and a buddy wrote a 10,000-page novel that I don't know where it is.
Oh, I know what you mean. I love hearing about sort of people's early writing stuff, especially when they're sort of in 3rd grade or whatever. Because I remember I wrote something that was like a really bad superhero story. I seem to remember about me and my friends, and I seem to remember somebody got their powers by falling into toxic waste because it was the 90s, and that's how you got powers.
Yeah, that's how you got superpowers. Yeah. You fell into toxic waste.
Exactly. I don't understand how else people get them.
Yeah, I don't really remember much about the story. It was just like, I was like, this person is the investigator. And I was like, now I need a villain. Who's the villain? This person's the villain. What are they investigating? I don't know. I'll figure it out as I go along. It was like, it was not good.
So, I mean, when it comes to the horror, I mean, do you more or less exclusively write horror at the moment, or do you do anything else?
At the moment, I think I exclusively write quote-unquote horror. I don't know if all of my stuff is technically counted as horror, and I know a lot of what I do is not polished, which is funny considering how much I do critiques. I'm like, your story does a lot of front loading, and then I'm like, there's my story, and I'll get a review, and it's like, this story has a bunch of front loading, and I was like, oh yeah, it does. I should have probably
It's so much
looked at that a little more.
It's so much easier when it's someone else's.
Yeah. I mean, because I did a pretty long review of banning Kellum's Jeff the Killer sequel story.
Oh yeah.
And he apparently liked it, but it was fairly in depth, and because of the length, I had to break it down section by section. But that's pretty much what I do on Too Spooky when I can. The issue is really time.
Yeah, it's not always that. That's So I mean, where'd you get your sort of inspirations from? Are there any particular writers that you like, that you try and work into your own stuff, or?
I don't know if there's any particular writers that I try to work into my own stuff. I basically, when I come up with an idea, I try to just sit down and write it, and I'll just sit there and just write whatever comes out until I think the story is done. And then I'll go back through and I was like, all right, well, what of this is good?
Yeah.
Often I try to write shorter stuff, and it ends up being like a 20-minute story that I wrote. And I'm like, all right, well, this needs work. But as far as authors go that I like, that I wish I could write like, I really like the way that David Wong writes. That's a pen name for an author for Crack.com. But he writes the John Dies at the End stories.
Oh, right, yeah.
And the way those are written is just fantastic. It's all first person. It's all really good. And there's sections of the story that I find hilarious because they're first person accounts from a friend. So the narrator will often go, all right, well, this is what John told me, so take that with a grain of salt, but apparently, and then it'll go into what John said.
Yeah. That's a classic unreliable narrator.
Yeah, and with this newest one, he actually just released a third book. The first one's John Dies at the End. Second one is This book is full of spiders. Seriously, dude, don't open it.
That's an awesome title.
Yeah, and this third book is called What the Fuck Did I Just Read? So what he did with this one is he actually broke it down so that it looks like each person wrote their own section. But so like the John sections are obviously the ones that are the most embellished, but it'll cut back into somebody else's part of the story where they're like, that did not happen. So that's really fun. Nice. And then I really like fantasy and stuff. I do a lot of D&D and role-playing, and that's probably where a lot of my creativity comes from, is just coming up with stuff for my game group. And a person who I really like, who does a very good job about giving unique settings, is Brandon Sanderson. Right. He does like the Mistborn series and the Stormlight Archives, and they're all interconnected, but all of the magic systems he comes up with are just amazing. Like he writes a superhero one called Steelheart, where superheroes showed up, but all of them are evil. And it's like, that's a cool setting.
Nice.
And then eventually throughout the series you learn why they're evil, and that revelation is even cooler. I mean, I'm not going to spoil that because that's a really cool thing that he does, but yeah, just the way he weaves his magic systems in is really cool.
Oh, nice. So, I mean, when it comes to horror, is there any sort of particular subgenres that you like to write? Like, are you more of a realist? Do you like a monster? Like, what stuff do you like to work in?
I don't know. I just try to work in what I think is weird, I guess. I think a lot of my stuff ends up being realist because that's what I know the most of. Like, I know a lot of people have mentioned Lovecraft, but I've never read Lovecraft.
I know what you mean. I always feel guilty because I think I've read about one Lovecraft story and it was good, but
yeah,
that's been it.
Yeah, all of your guests come on and they're like, "Yeah, Lovecraft is a big inspiration," and I'm like, "I've never read Lovecraft." I mean, John Dies at the End has some Lovecraftian themes, but it's not Lovecraft.
Yeah,
it's not dull and boring and just very descriptive. It's fast paced and actiony.
Nice. So when I'm again, in your writing, where is it that you like? Where is there a particular place you tend to get inspiration from? And what is it that's like setting you off with an idea for a story?
No, I don't think there's a particular place. I just get an idea and I write it down, and then I eventually start writing a story for it. For instance, there was a story I wrote not long ago that I don't know if I ever published anywhere, where it was just about, it was for the Love Pasta Challenge for the Undercooked Analysis group.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I ever published it anywhere, but it was about a guy who, a man and his wife who are pregnant with twins, and they go into the hospital and only one of the twins survives and the mother also dies.
Ooh.
And he leaves the child because he can't bear to look at him. And I think I drew that from like one of my own fears, where me and my wife are trying to have children, and I don't know how I would take it if she died in like that situation. So I kind of worked that kind of inspiration in, but not all of my stories are drawn like that.
Yeah. That's cool. So let's
I have one story right now. I have one story right now that I'm trying to work on, where it's about the Chicago fires, and I think that just inspiration just kind of hit me. Like, I don't think there was anything that I had an idea for. I was just like, the Chicago fires, that was around this time. You know what else wasn't around this time? Let's see if I just throw that in. And then that's where that story's gone. I haven't worked on it yet, but
that's it. No, I know what you mean. I've constantly got half ideas for stories floating around in my head that
right.
I'm just waiting for that time for them to actually become an actual narrative, as opposed to this one creepy thing that I can think of.
Right. And I think that's the challenge.
Yeah, definitely. So I mean, speaking of inspiration, let's talk about the story you sent over. So the story sent over was Hospital Rounds. Now, just to get the disclaimer out of the way, as I do every episode, I'll put the link in the description. Let's get spoilery. I highly suggest anyone listening reads it first. It's a great story, and then we can talk about it and ruin it as much as we like. So,
absolutely.
That's it. So, fair warning given. Give us an overview of the story.
So the overview of the story is there's a doctor, a leading physician, who is leading around his students to different patients, and basically doing rounds. Tell me about this patient. What about these complications? What would we do in this instance? Kind of thing. And during all of that, he has like an internal monologue where he's like, these kids don't get it. These nurses are more in touch with patients than I am. And it's not that long of a story, but the twist at the end is where you kind of get hit. There's a little kid who's got into a car accident with his dad, and his dad died. And the mother is there trying to hold it all together. And she ends up breaking down when the monitors start going off and her son basically starts dying. Then there's another twist because none of the doctors there are reacting.
Yeah.
And then the little boy comes out and he grabs their hand and they walk away saying they're going to come back for the rest later. And so, the implication is that they're all Grim Reapers. And there's an older Grim Reaper teaching new Grim Reapers how to reap.
No, exactly. I really enjoy it, because I know you said to me before that you've rewritten this a few times. Like I really enjoyed this version that you've ended up with. Like, I'd say the twist, the twist, like for me at least, came out of nowhere more or less, and just. I'd say I thought it's one of those ones that did what I really like, where I thought it was going to go one place and it went to a completely different place.
Yeah, because it seems like I tried to make it so that it seemed like the twist was that the kid was dying, and then a few people have gotten what the twist was before the end of it, but I tried to hold it back as long as possible. No,
definitely, and I'd say did a good job of it. I mean, obviously with this one, it being sort of set in a hospital, did you do much research to do with this story? Or
I'm gonna be honest, I got the inspiration from watching Scrubs.
Yeah. But I won't lie, I did get a kind of Scrubs vibe from it, but I was like, I don't want to just say that.
Because, my wife's a nurse, but she doesn't work in a hospital, and I don't really know much about what hospital rounds are like. So all of my inspiration for it came from Scrubs, and I was watching Scrubs, and I was like, well, what if this?
Yeah. That's it. I'd also have to admit, like, the hospital that they're wandering around sounds like a terrible hospital. If there's because they meet like 4 people, and if they're all coming back for them later, this hospital has a very poor success rate. But
yeah.
But yeah, so with the story, where did you start with it? Did you start with the ending, or did you or where was sort of like the beginning point for you?
Yeah, anytime I have a story that has a twist like that, I generally start with the twist, and I was like, that's where I want the story to go. How do I get there? And then I just start writing, and I'm like, all right, well, let's have them visit a bunch of patients, and then so I think originally I wrote only 3 patients, with the boy being the 3rd. Mm. And I posted it and I was like, hey, I want this to be longer. Anybody want to help me make it longer? And I had a couple people look at it, and I ended up adding 2 more people, so that there's 6 total, 5 or 6 total. And so that helped with the length. And then I kind of worked on how the mother was feeling, and because that's where the shock value comes from, not necessarily the twist, but the Definitely. Shock. So I worked on that quite a bit, and that was my most recent edit. The one on Too Spooky is actually more recent than the one that's on the Creepypasta Wiki.
Mm. Nice. I mean, just out of curiosity, what is it that made you think that it needed to be longer? Because again, it's something in my own writing that I'm never sure about, and I've often had people say, "Oh, this is too long. This is too short." So what was it that sort of gave you the feeling that it needed to be longer?
Well, basically what happened is I looked at it and I read it, and I was like, "All right, well, the twist comes out, but there wasn't enough lead up to it."
Yeah.
And it was just kind of like a judgment call. I was just looking at it, and I was like, all right, well, this happens, and then this happens, and then there's a twist. It's like, that's way too soon. I need more people. I need it to last a little bit longer. And in doing that, the implication is also that they're in a recovery room, but they're also just walking around a hospital. And so I was just kind of leading them to different people and being like, well, what if there were different stages of people? Because I've got one girl who's like recovering, like in recovery.
Yeah.
And then there's who's like almost ready to go home. And then I've got one person who's coming in for a tonsillectomy. So it's like, there's not that many different cases, And then I've got the boy who's a more extreme case, and I was like, all right, well, I'll have varying levels of severity and stuff, and that'll make it a little bit longer. And
that's it. And I think also adds to the realism in many ways. Just sort of like, because again, the hospitals that I've been in, it is set up like that. You know, I mean, you've got the different people with different ailments all over the place.
Right, and I think when it was like 2 or 3 people, it was so short that the twist kind of hits you too hard. Like I feel like with it being longer, the twist is a little more subtle.
Yeah, definitely.
So I think that's where it came from, and it's hard to do because I've written stories that I'm like, this one's perfect, and then I've had people go, well, you should put more description in there, and I was like, oh, yeah, I guess I should.
That's fair enough. So, and what gave the idea for this one? What was it sort of based in?
Yeah, like again, it was just watching Scrubs. Like my wife's a nurse, and she really likes that show because she likes watching a lot of comedies, and funnily enough, she likes pointing out everything that they do wrong in that show. They're wearing their stethoscopes the wrong way is one of the ones I hear quite a bit.
Classic. You know, my girlfriend's a vet nurse as well, and so she'll. I think her pet peeve is whenever anyone gets drugged to get taken anywhere, and they go like straight to sleep. She gets really irritated with that. But, cool. So again with this one, is there? I mean, how many rewrites did you end up going through? Like, how many iterations have there been?
I think this is only like the 4th or 5th. I haven't really done too many. The first rewrite I did was basically just adding people.
Yeah.
So that I could up the length. The second rewrite, I polished up some of the wording. I did a little bit of research to find out, what kind of things they would actually talk about, or
right, yeah.
kind of clean up like the narrator's frustrations a little bit.
Nice.
And then like the third rewrite was just, spelling errors. I made the mother's pain a little bit more visceral, but not really all that much. And then I was actually listening to your podcast with when you had Dead Palette on, and I was like, you know what, that makes a lot more sense. And I went back in and I made the mother's pain a little bit more visceral.
Oh, we actually helped. I feel proud of that. But,
yep.
I mean, it's like is that your usual process then? I mean, do you tend to sort of write and then rewrite, or is it, or is that sort of? What I tend
to do is I tend to write a story, and then I'm like, all right, what's wrong with this story? What does it need?
Yeah.
And then I'll try and go through and fix those things. But I generally don't touch stories for a while. Like, I think I wrote this story. When did I write this story? I wrote this story February of last year.
All right.
February 2016. And I haven't really touched it since then. I did a couple of rewrites just to clean it up and lengthen it, like I said. But the only real major rewrite that I've done since then is this most recent one, where I think I did that a couple weeks ago.
Nice. And were there any points where you got stuck with it? Were there any sort of roadblocks that you came across, and like, if so, how did you get over them? Was it all quite smooth?
My biggest roadblock was actually the realism, because, like I said, I only had Scrubs to go on, and that was not intentional. I just couldn't find any documents about what actual hospital rounds are like. So I just couldn't find anything. And so I was just like, all right, well, I guess this is what I got. I hope people like it.
Well, I'd say I certainly did, if that's any consolation.
Well, I appreciate it.
It's all good.
I think it's one of my better stories.
Nice, nice. Cool, so...
Personally.
Oh, no, definitely. And so, yeah, so I mean, I think that's enough on that one. So let's move on to the other one you sent over, the Dead Palette story, Banana in a Jar, which is the third time we've had a Dead Palette story on here, if you don't count, well, including the time he selected one of his own. But so yeah, again, this is it's a short one, isn't it? And so what is it about this one that made you want to send it over?
So this one actually appeals to me quite a bit, and not just because I'm the narrator.
Shameless plug.
Shameless plug. This is actually the first story I ever narrated, so I was pretty proud of it. But beyond that, it actually hit really close to home when I was reading it. The basic premise is it's about a guy who was an alcoholic, and he's gone through AA, and that hits pretty close to home because I don't have any issues with alcoholism personally, but I have family members who do, and it's affected me in such a way that I don't drink alcohol at all. And so just reading through that brought up a lot of emotions for me. And then the twist at the end where, you find out that, again, blanket spoiler warning, go watch it because it's a really great story, and I'm butchering it right now, even though I'm the one who originally read it. You find out that the guy, the narrator, had killed someone inadvertently. Like, he didn't intend to kill him. Because of his alcoholism, someone ended up dying, but he's forgotten that person's name. And so he's going through AA, and he's trying to, find that person. So he's putting out there on the internet, basically, if anybody, knows where I can find this person or knows his name.
Yeah.
So.
No.
And I think what Dead Palette does, that very few writers or narrators do, is he makes all of his visuals, he actually goes out there and gets himself.
Yeah.
So for this one, it's a lot of he actually, I think, got a friend who was giving helicopter tours to fly him over some wooded areas.
Nice.
And then he went through and walked through the woods with a video camera. But he also went the extra step and actually got a couple of bananas and put them in a jar. So all of the things that the narrator says are in a jar, Dead Palette actually put those in a jar and then let them rot over weeks.
Oh, nice.
Then he went out into the woods and buried it and then filmed himself going back out to get that. And that extra step, when you hear my narration over it, it just adds so much to the story.
Definitely, and I also thought I found myself saying this a lot about Dead Palette stories, is that it really seemed to sort of capture a sort of sense of I want to say a sense of longing almost, and I think I even said this in the interview I did with him, but just sort of like there's in so many of his stories, there's just that element of someone who is looking for something to complete themselves in a way, whether it's to say sorry or to because that they've lost their daughter, or because with so many of the other stories that he's done.
Yeah, it's definitely a running theme of his where he seems to have a lot of want, something that somebody's searching for to make themselves whole in a way. And I think a good thing about his stuff is a lot of his stuff leaves more questions than answers.
Yeah.
So.
No, definitely. And And yeah, I mean, yeah, and I can't remember if it was something that someone said on this podcast, whether it's from a undercooked analysis, but sort of like the way it's like a lot of the really good horrors, or the really good creepypastas, at least, it's kind of rooted in sadness. Like, again, Pen Pal is the one that always comes to mind for me constantly, just because it's my favourite. But but yeah, obviously, the whole story boils down to a guy who misses his friend.
Yeah, I like Pen Pal a lot, but I think the way that it's told now is kind of butchering it in a way. because a lot of the great things about Pen Pal came from the fact that it was on a Reddit board where there was an AMA for the author, and the authors have to be in character. Mm. And so I feel like you lose a lot of that experience where you don't have that question answer section. Because even the second story is like, it starts out, I think it's Footsteps.
Yeah.
It starts out, hey, from talking to everyone, I remembered, and it was like, cool, you know?
Yeah.
A lot of the questions that, people brought up probably, helped shape that second story, and you just don't get that when you read it in book form, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, exactly.
It's still a great story. It's just that interaction is kind of lost.
Yeah, exactly. Almost brings it into sort of ARG territory, almost sort of like in a very sort of basic sense, that interactivity.
Yeah, it's something that you can't recreate.
Yeah,
unless you do a whole new story.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah. So when it comes to Dead Palette, then is there any sort of elements of his writing style that you try and work into your own writing, or?
Really, it's just that I've tried to do a lot more realist stuff since I've talked to him, but I'm not terribly good at it. I'm like, this is realist horror, and then I got told once that it wasn't horrifying enough. I was like, oh, all right.
Yeah.
I guess I don't have much experience to draw off of, because as far as horror goes, I don't really like being scared. Like, I'm one of the people who's like, okay, well, there's a haunted house. I'm going to go over to this other house while you guys go in there, because that sounds terrifying.
Yeah.
What are we watching? Oh, Freddy vs. Jason, or Friday the 13th, or Alien. I'm like, I'm going to go watch something else with the lights on, with my head, with my ears plugged, going la la la. I generally don't like being scared, and I think that stems from I get vivid nightmares about things that scare me during the day, and I just like to sleep.
Yeah.
I once watched Twister, and even though that's not really a horror movie in that much of a sense, that thing kept me up for nights on end, even though I live in New Hampshire, which has a total of one tornado every 70 years.
That's what. For me, it was bizarrely Tremors, like an awful film by all standards. But that, for some reason, it really got to me when I was a kid.
Yeah, I tend to not like horror movies, but I do like creepy things. And I guess there's a lot of people don't see the distinction, but like I like Over the Garden Wall, because that's inherently creepy. But I don't like Friday the 13th because that's supposed to be inherently scary.
Yeah.
Obviously, I could probably watch it and be fine, but I'd rather just avoid it because I don't like slasher films, because I don't like being in a situation where I could be scared. I like that air of I'm unsettled, but I don't know why, versus that something just scared me and now that's going to haunt my dreams.
It's a lot more real, isn't it? I mean, essentially, there's lots of things day to day that are creepy, whereas there are not a lot of things, especially as an adult, that are actually scary.
Taxes.
That's it, exactly. That's it. Dying alone. You know, all of the the existential stuff that's kind of hard to work into a story.
Right. And I feel like I've gotten better, but I don't think I'm all that great at it.
Yeah.
But with Dead Palette actually issued a challenge that's coming up, and I'm hoping I've got a plan for something that I'm hoping will work out, and I'm drawing off of a lot of real life inspiration for this one. So
that's it. I've entered as well, and I'm really excited about it. And as you say, I've already got ideas, and I just know as soon as I get the entry pack, it's going to blow all of my ideas out of the water, and I'm going to have to start again. But
yeah, I'm fairly certain that mine will survive even with an entry pack, but I don't know. I'm just waiting for tomorrow.
That's it. As long as mine includes lipstick and mannequins, I'm there. I'm sorted. But that's a very specific thing, and I don't think it's going to happen.
I mean, you could work that in there. It's just whatever he gives you, you have to work in.
Yeah, exactly. And so then this will be my first attempt at realist as well, so we'll see if I can actually make a horror story out of it. So cool. So, I mean, in terms of, that's what we're speaking about that contest, but I mean, the scene in general, what are your thoughts on sort of the creepypasta scene at the moment?
I think generally it's good, but I feel like it's in a weird sort of rise and decline at the same time, which I know sounds weird, but I've seen a lot of people, like it's gone a little bit more mainstream with the sci-fi series that I can't remember. Channel Zero. I won't comment on that because I haven't actually seen it, and I pretty much refuse to judge something if I haven't seen it.
That's it. I feel bad because I've just started watching the second season, and everyone's been saying it's awful, and I'm watching it and going, I'm really enjoying this.
Yeah, like I think I can understand people's concerns, like with the first one where it was Candle Cove. I can understand why some people wouldn't like that, because Candle Cove kind of exists in a way that you're kind of ruining it by making Candle Cove. It's like there was a bunch of people when Candle Cove was really popular who made the videos that were being described. Yeah. It's like, okay, did you not understand the story, or like that show wasn't real? But I think there's something to be said with, getting a story and reinterpreting it for a wider audience. I can't say as to whether or not they're improving it, because again, I haven't seen it. But
well, that's it. I mean, my personal view on it, and I'm going to say it because it's the one clever thought I think I've had in a while. But it's the. But I like to think it's sort of it's the price you've got to pay. Like if you look at like superhero movies now, obviously everyone's loving it. They're really big. Everyone thinks they're great. But to get there, we have to sit through Batman and Robin. You know what I mean? It's sort of like it's finding its feet. It's just
don't bash the nipple bat suit.
Exactly. Get the Clooney needs to be more superheroes, I feel. But
I mean, I could go on about the whole superhero thing for a while, but that's a different topic.
That's it. But this is, I feel we're just going through that stage where people are sort of just stumbling, getting it to the masses. They're going to butcher the hell out of it, but at least it's sort of paving the way, maybe, for something better down the road.
The issue I have with that is I feel like we're not. I feel like, quote unquote, Hollywood in general doesn't fully understand horror.
Yeah,
and because of that, whenever they try to take like something and adapt it, it doesn't work in the way they want. And I mean, my philosophy is, if you want to make money in Hollywood, make a horror movie. Doesn't matter if it's good or bad. There's not enough good ones, so everybody's going to go see it.
Yeah.
You know, so you can spend $10,000 on a movie by getting a basic plot, sticking a camcorder in someone's hand and saying, go for it. And that will turn a profit of astronomical rates because people are going to go see it.
That's it. I must admit, I hadn't actually thought about it like that, in the fact that, yeah, I suppose horror movies especially are quite cheap to make.
Yeah, it's not only are they're cheap and they're effective, you know, because, and it's not that they're actually effective at what they do, it's that people who are into horror want a good horror movie, so they have to see all the horror movies in order to see a good one, because there's not that many. You know, they might find that diamond in the rough and go towards it, but they have to sit through all of the crap beforehand. You know, they have to sit through their Batman and Robins over and over and over, because nobody fully understands why something is good.
Yeah. And so in terms of the online horror stuff, I mean, what do you think makes a good online horror story?
I feel like there's different things that make a good online horror story, and you know, to say that because somebody is doing something somebody else did makes it bad is just flat out wrong. But I think for me, with a creepypasta, I like to see the more realist stuff. But as far as online horror goes, it's, as long as it's effectively conveyed what you're doing, then it really doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You know, it's the same as Hollywood. If they did it effectively, more people would see it.
That makes sense. I mean, and what is it, do you feel that, like, the online horror scenes need? What would make the scene better, do you think?
I think a lot more community would make it better. I've been on Reddit a couple of times. I haven't actually, you know, submitted anything there, but I've heard people talk about it, and it's like, here's my story, and then it gets deleted for non-story. And it's like, why did you delete my story because it was a non-story? Like, it's obviously a story.
Yeah.
Like that, I feel like that deletion category doesn't make sense at all. But beyond that, I think just being able to talk and work with people makes it a lot better. The Creepypasta Wiki, I think one of its biggest flaws is that they don't advertise the writer's workshop enough, because they actually have this place where you can post your story and get it reviewed and edited by other people, but it's not advertised on the front page. So you have to look through their hold on a second. So you have to look through their quality standards. And in their quality standards, it says, hey, if you're going to post something, make sure it's good. And if you don't think it's good, post it to the writer's workshop. But that's not something that you generally get until you post your first story and it gets deleted because it's not up to the quality standards. Then they're like, you should post it in the writer's workshop. And it's like, okay, well, why isn't that advertised more? Because I think when I talk about Too Spooky, the first thing I say is, hey, there's a critique section. Again, that's not advertised right on the front page, and I think that's a little bit of an error. But we also have a Discord just for Too Spooky, where anybody can come in and talk. If somebody says, hey, can somebody review my story? I say, sure, post it here on the Too Spooky critique section, and I'll take a look at it. And the Creepypasta Wiki I don't think it has its own Discord, and if it does, it's not advertised. But when you go to the Too Spooky site, the first thing you see is the Discord, and we have tons of people there all the time. You know.
Exactly,
and I think
European contingent up. There's people there that aren't awake, which is amazing.
Right, and I think having that more close knit community, where you can have instant messaging as opposed to, hey, here's this thing, and then maybe somebody will look at it. Really improves everybody's thing. Where you can improve your writing style, you can improve all of these other things. After posting a few stories to Creepypasta, I ended up actually posting one directly to the writer's workshop because I wanted to say, hey, can you review this before I put it up? Because I've had a few stories deleted, and I didn't want that to happen again. But it took getting deleted a couple of times in order to figure that out.
Yeah. That's it.
And No Sleep doesn't have that at all. They don't have. I think they have like an editing area where you can like pitch ideas and stuff, but I don't know very much about that either.
Yeah.
And I don't think
they've got a out of character thread, which is where they can sort of talk about aspects of it. But yeah, which again,
the average user isn't going to know about. If I go to Reddit No Sleep, I'm not going to be linked directly to the OOC where I can talk about my story that I want to do.
Yeah.
So I think the big improvement would be, community.
That's fair, and and as the moral of the story is people should head on over to Too Spooky and check it out there. Especially with the Dead Pallets contest, because that's where all the entries are going to be posted. So it's going to be kicking off.
Yep.
In the immediate future.
And if you want to talk to some pretty cool people, just jump into our Discord. It's open to everybody.
That's it. We're both on there. It's got to be amazing. Nice. So I suppose when it comes to sort of giving advice to sort of the guys who are new to it, I mean, what advice would you give to any sort of new writers out there who want a place to start or want some advice, to get going with?
Yeah.
Sorry,
that was fun.
That's it. I guess that's what happens when you drop something onto an ashtray.
You get a loud ringing in your ears. I think, like I said, the best advice I can give is keep writing and get it reviewed. You can write a million stories, but if you're writing your own stories and nobody's reading them, you're not going to know anything about what you're doing wrong. A lot of places, like the Creepypasta Wiki and No Sleep specifically, they are looking for quality, and that's not a bad thing, but it's going to get frustrating if you post a story and it gets deleted. It's probably going to turn you off a little bit. So my suggestion is go to a place like the Wiki even, that has, a writer's workshop or an OOC, or on Too Spooky, we have the Too Spooky critique section, where you can, talk about your story and get it improved, have people review it, have people give you suggestions and edits, and take that advice. If someone says your story doesn't work because of X, don't get mad about it. You're perfectly within your right to defend your story. If I say your story is crap, that's not an improvement.
Yeah.
Me saying that your ending doesn't make sense is not an improvement. Me saying that your ending could be improved by, that's a critic. That's a critique, And I think it's important to first, get rid of all of the non-critique, and then just, take in all the critique. But even somebody coming onto your story and saying, hey, your story's crap, that's a critique. That's somebody saying, I don't like your story. And you shouldn't respond to them, with something like, oh, why do you're just a person who doesn't understand it. It should be like, well, why? Why do you think that story's crap? what can I do to improve it in your eyes, you know? And I think just a lot of people don't like to ask the questions.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are just looking for praise. They're like, hey, I wrote this awesome story. What do you think? And some people are like, oh, this story is great. And then another person's like, I don't like this story at all. And they're like, oh, well, somebody liked my story, so that means everybody should like my story. And this person who doesn't like my story is just being negative because they want attention.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, no, that's not how the world works. They probably don't like your story, but they're not really helping you by saying, I don't like your story. They should say, you know, and that's a suggestion to anybody who goes and comments on something too. If you say you don't like a story, tell the person why. You know?
Yeah.
Give valid reasons. You know, I don't like your story because it feels like the ending is anticlimactic. Oh, well, cool. What do you think I could do to improve it?
That's it.
You know?
That's it. Essentially help build that sense of community we want.
Right.
Nice, man. Well, as I say, that's pretty much all my questions for this one. So, as I say, for the just for to finish off, if there's anything you want to plug, any way you want to tell people to go, and where can people find you, anything like that, now's your time to do it.
Well, I think the only place you can really find me is on the Too Spooky Discord. I'll occasionally, I'm usually in there all day, even if it'll take a while for me to get a note of you. But if you want me to review something on the critique section, just give me a poke. But I will say, just keep an eye out for this next month, because this writing challenge for Dead Palette is going to be pretty big. There's 132 writers that are going to be making a community story, all based around the same little area, and it's going to be pretty big. So I'm pretty excited for it.
Nice, me too. I second that. So everyone, head on over to Too Spooky. It's going to kick off. But no, let's say thanks a lot for coming on, Lavecki. I really appreciate it, and let's say it's been great talking to you. Yeah, thanks a lot.
Absolutely.
Nice one. Well, that's Lavecki, everyone. Thanks a lot for listening. I know we mentioned it many times during the interview, but as I say, if you're free in the next month, please pop over to Too Spooky. The storage unit contest is promising to be a really good one. It's all already kicking off at the moment. Otherwise, as I say, like and subscribe. I love a like and subscribe. Check us out on Facebook, facebook.com/InsertPassageUpon here. And feel free to come over to the website and check out my writing at InsertPassageUpon here.com. And of course, we're now on iTunes and on Stitcher, so feel free to review us, leave a message. As I say, I'll appreciate any criticism you give me, and obviously any comments mean I love you forever. I'll see you next time, guys. Bye.